On July 16th, Pope Francis released a bombshell of a law titled Guardians of the Tradition. It limits and restricts the celebration of the traditional Latin Mass. Now, this edict revoked the wide permission to celebrate the extraordinary form of the Mass, the Latin Mass, granted 13 years ago by Francis's living predecessor, Pope Benedict XVI. And it took effect immediately. Why were these restrictions ordered now, and will Francis's decree bring about the unity that he seeks throughout the Church? Joining me now with insight is the former head of the Congregation for the Doctrine of Faith, Gerhard Cardinal Mueller from Rome, and preeminent canon lawyer, former head of the Apostolic Signatura, Raymond Cardinal Burke, who joins us from the road in Minnesota. Your Eminences, thank you for being here. Cardinal Mueller, I'd like to begin with you. As I mentioned, the Motu Proprio was issued effective immediately, with essentially no time for bishops to digest what's being asked here. What was your impression of the tone of the document, and perhaps more significantly, the tone of the letter that accompanied Guardians of the Tradition?
Yeah, it's not a good example of synodality, about which is spoken so often. But the Custodes, Traditionis is concerning the apostolic tradition, the faith, the revealed faith of the Church, and not the discipline of the liturgy. And also the Vatican Council is saying, even the liturgy, the Church has not wished to impose a rigid uniformity in matters which do not implicate the faith or the good of the whole community. It is said in Sacrosanctum Concilium number 37. That's the words of the Second Vatican Council. And what is necessary is to conserve and to remain in the tradition of the immutable elements divinely instituted of the Church, of the liturgy of the Holy Eucharist. But we have different rites and different history of rites in the one Holy Church. And after the Vatican Council, this new form of the liturgical order is also very different in some countries. We have some adaptations in the different cultures, but we are always the same Catholic faith all over the world in different liturgical forms. It's not so absolutely urgent to unify rigidly, in a uniformity, rigid uniformity, all the rites and the variations of the rites which we have also since hundreds and hundreds of years, also within the Roman rite in the Latin Church. We have the Ambrosian rite and other rites, also, but within the Catholic, and therefore is no necessity to take away this the older form of the Missal of 1962.
Cardinal Burke, the Motu Proprio claims to seek unity by limiting the old rite and focusing on the post-Vatican II Novus Ordo. The real question is, what did Vatican II demand of the liturgy? What did the Council have in mind when it permitted the use of the vernacular? And was the old rite abrogated or forbidden?
That's a very good question. There, objectively speaking, the implementation of Sacrosanctum Concilium, not to speak of other conciliar documents, was extremely problematic. And this is testified to by the diaries of Annibale Bugnini, who was the head of the Concilium, which was in charge of the implementation, but also by great liturgists and theologians like Father Louis Bouillet. What needs to happen now is there needs to be a return to the texts of the Second Vatican Council and not to the so-called spirit of the Council, and to say exactly what the Council mandated. And if you return to those texts, you will find, for instance, that there was still to be a strong emphasis on the use of Latin in the sacred liturgy, the preeminence of Gregorian chant and polyphony, the organ. There are just any number of norms having to do with the sacred liturgy, which were completely ignored by the implementation. And I experienced it myself. I was in the university at the time of the conciliar the Sacrosanctum Concilium was being implemented, and I was in the seminary, I'd been in the minor seminary, and experienced all the beauty of the usus antiquae, of the more ancient usage, and I saw it all dismantled in a most radical way. And of course, in local areas, it went far even beyond the already radical provisions of the Novus Ordo. So what has to happen is we need to return to the conciliar text and to see exactly what the Council Fathers were teaching and mandating, and to compare what Saint Pius V did after the Council of Trent in implementing the Roman Missal to what happened after the Second Vatican Council. It simply is not correct. Pope Pius V, Pope St. Pius V, regulated the order of the Mass as it had fundamentally existed already from the time of Pope St. Gregory the Great, whereas in the Vatican Council, after the Vatican Council, we find a radical diminution of the rite, a radical change in it. I don't in any way question its validity, but we're still dealing with that radical change, which was indeed a novus ordo, a new order, in the sense that it seemed to have a very weak relationship with the order of the Mass as it had been known up till then.
In his introductory letter to this Motu Proprio, Pope Francis says his decision to restrict the old rite came in part from a recent survey sent to bishops and their responses. Now, that survey apparently was not widely circulated. American journalist in Rome, Diane Montagne, reported that multiple Vatican sources told her that about 30% of the world's bishops actually responded to the survey, and over half the respondents gave either a favorable or neutral view of the old rite. Now, Montagne also reported that one source very familiar with the consultation document said, although the questions were notably biased against Summorum Pontificum, that was the permission to say the old Mass that Pope Benedict granted, that it did not always elicit a clear and specific response. And what emerged from the questionnaire is how the traditional Latin Mass had taken root. Despite this, Francis says, quote, "The responses reveal a situation that preoccupies and saddens me and persuades me of the need to intervene." The Pope claims that people have used Benedict's permission to create divisions in the Church. Cardinal Burke, you frequently celebrate the extraordinary form. Do you see these dire divisions that Pope Francis is indicating here?
No, I don't understand it at all. I have a very wide experience also in different parts of the world with the faithful that are as far away even as New Zealand, with the faithful who are very attached to the extraordinary form, and they're anything but divisive. They're very loving toward their priests and bishops and toward the Holy Father, even sometimes when they've been treated very roughly by a bishop or by a priest. My response is, if the survey revealed this, it must have been from certain areas. And why wouldn't that be dealt with directly and individually rather than imposing what I would call a revolutionary, very harsh discipline on all the faithful who are nourished profoundly by the extraordinary form? And I would say this too, that if this survey was so significant, should there not have been a report of it, an official report of it on the part of the congregation? And also the Pope says there are two reasons: the results of the survey and the desires of the congregation for the doctrine of the faith. Why hasn't the congregation issued some document to express these desires? Because this is a very serious act that the Holy Father has taken And in fact, it's clear from the document that the intention is to eliminate any celebration according to the extraordinary form. It says that the faithful are to be served, but they're to return to the Missal of Paul VI. And so it's a very serious matter. There's no question about it. I hope that helps.
Cardinal Mueller, your thought on this. What do you think is the Pope's intent here? And why do you think that survey wasn't released, the actual data from the world's bishops?
It's always very difficult to interpret those surveys. Everybody has his own opinion and understanding, but the magisterium of the Pope and of the bishops must go along of the dogmatical principles of the Catholic doctrine. And there we must say we have the one Holy Mass in different variations, but variations not in the faith, but the variations in the liturgical form, and therefore I don't see no reason for suppressing the Holy Mass, how it was celebrated for 100 years in this form since the Council of Trent and in the time also before, in the great continuity from the Last Supper of Jesus with his apostles up to now in the present Catholic Church. And I think the problems we have in the substance of the faith, look to the Church in Germany with the synodal path, these are the true problems of the Church today. We have to confront, we have to avoid these schismas and these heresies. And in this older form, Vetus Ordo, I don't see no form of heresy. Could be that some people are strange, but on both sides we have strange people. But the strange people or some extremists cannot be the order which we have to follow. We have our clear principles, 21 ecumenical councils. We have the apostolic creed and the other forms, and that is the apostolic tradition of the Church. Custodes, Traditionis will say the bishop are not in the first sense the custodes of a uniforming of the rites, but of the unity of the faith and the Holy Seven Sacraments, which are the mediation of the grace of God. And this is the points we have to look for, the unity of the Church in the substance of the faith. And that is a mission of St. Peter and his successors.
Cardinal Burke, before we run out of time, as a canonist, your thoughts on the construction of this Motu Proprio. How binding is it? And your thoughts on the Pope's assertion that the liturgy of Paul VI, or the Novus Ordo, is the unique expression of the lex orandi, the law of what is prayed, of the Roman Rite?
Well, canonically, there are a number of difficulties with the text. Cardinal Mueller mentioned one of them, the lack of any time between the publication of the text and the implementation in such a serious matter. And when there was no real emergency, one bishop, I read his comment, he said he found out about the document through the news media, and of course it was immediately enforced. So from a canonical point of view, everyone involved is justified in taking their time to whatever time is needed to see how to implement this document. There are other serious problems. For instance, the Pope has the fullness of power, which is defined as all power needed to safeguard and promote the faith and discipline. But the Pope can't simply declare a rite of the Mass, which has existed, practically speaking, from the time from apostolic times, to be now evil and a source of division and so forth. So this has to be sorted out. There are a great number of serious questions to be raised. Also, there are institutes and associations whose very nature is involved with the cultivation of the extraordinary form. You can't suddenly by this Motu Proprio declare all of them to be abrogated. The privileges and the permissions which they have. So all of this will certainly have to be sorted out. And finally, it's not possible to say that the Missal of Paul VI is the only. It's translated in English as unique, but if Italian, which seems to be the case, is in the language, unica means only, and the extraordinary form, the usus antiquior, is very much alive, and it is a wonderful expression of the Roman Rite. So rich and so beautiful, attracting many people, converts to the faith. So many priests have told me how learning to celebrate the Mass, extraordinary form, has deepened their own spirituality. So to say that it's not an expression of the Roman Rite, it's simply, I don't understand that. That can't, literally speaking, it can't be true.
Very quickly, I'm going to ask both of you the same question before I let you go. Do you sense a danger that this Motu Proprio will, for the faithful, set the old Mass against the new, and by force, Francis against Benedict? What of the hermeneutic of continuity we heard so much about?
Well, there certainly is. There is a great danger because the document, objectively speaking, is very harsh, and it's revolutionary in its declarations and in the restrictions that it imposes. And it's quite clear. Even commentators who are not particularly familiar get the clear message that the Pope Francis is declaring that what his predecessors, especially Pope St. John Paul II and Pope Benedict XVI, legislated, did not achieve the purpose of the legislation, and fundamentally is revoked, and to take a whole new approach. And this will, there is a division, and this has exacerbated it. And I think that we need to address, especially the faithful, must remember that Christ is with us in his church, no matter what kind of legislation may come down, even from the highest authority. And we have to stick with Christ. We don't abandon him and go into schism or abandon the church altogether, but we have to remain faithful and continue to do all the good that has been done liturgically and continue it. And I want to give that message, especially that not lose heart, as discouraging and as hurtful as the text is, that they not lose heart.
The hermeneutic of continuity is a basic principle of the Catholic faith. And there is not good this impression that there are contradictions between the popes and tensions between the faithful. And I said this application of this principle lex orandi is wrong, is not referring to the external rites, but is referring to the substance of the faith expressed in the sacramental form, in the canon of the Holy Mass, and in the sacramental formula of the seven sacraments, and not in the question how many knee bows, genuflexes you have, and that has nothing to do with lex orandi, lex credendi. And it would be better to come back to a sound theology.
Very good. We will leave it there. Your Eminences, Cardinal Raymond Burke, Cardinal Gerhard Mueller, I thank you both for your time.